My sister skipped our father's final months, then demanded half of what he left me. Family is family. I stood my ground. She tried to ruin me for it. She didn't know I was documenting every move. When Dad died, I thought grief would be the hardest part. For months, my life had revolved around him. Appointments, medications, paperwork, calls from doctors, nights when I stayed because he didn't want to be alone. His health had been declining for a while, so none of us could pretend his death came without warning. Knowing it was coming didn't make it easier. What made those final months harder was knowing my younger sister, Megan, could have been there. She chose not to be. Megan and Dad had been estranged for years. Our parents divorced when I was 12 and Megan was 9. There wasn't one dramatic betrayal that ended their marriage. Dad worked constantly. Mom felt ignored. Dad thought Mom resented how hard he worked. Mom believed he cared more about work than the family. Eventually, they stopped trying to fix it. After the divorce, I spent most of my time with Dad. Megan stayed mostly with Mom. That difference shaped almost everything that came afterward. Megan blamed Dad for the divorce. In her mind, he had chosen work over us. Mom never directly told her to hate him, but she didn't do much to soften that belief either. I grew up hearing comments like, "Your father always knew where his priorities were." Dad had his flaws. I'm not pretending otherwise. But he kept trying to have a relationship with Megan. He called. He sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts. Sometimes she answered. Usually she didn't. Once, when Megan was a teenager, I found Dad standing in the kitchen holding a sealed birthday card. "You sending that to Megan?" I asked. He looked at the envelope. "She'll probably throw it away." "Then why send it?" He gave me a tired smile. "Because I'm still her father." He mailed it. That was their relationship for years. Dad reached out. Megan kept her distance. The biggest break came around her high school graduation. She hadn't invited Dad. He went anyway. From what he told me, he stayed toward the back and didn't make a scene. He just wanted to watch his daughter graduate. Megan saw him afterward and became furious. She accused him of showing up to make her day about himself. When Dad came home, I found him sitting at the kitchen table. "Was it bad?" I asked. He stared down at his hands. "She doesn't want me there." He didn't say anything else. After that, he still reached out, but not as often. Years passed. Megan built her own life. Dad built his. And I stayed somewhere in the middle. I never hated my sister for being distant from him. She had her memories of our childhood. I had mine. Divorce has a way of making two children grow up in the same family, and somehow remember two completely different homes. But when Dad got sick, I thought all of that history might stop mattering. I was wrong. The first time I called Megan about his condition, I was sitting in my car outside the hospital. She answered after several rings. "Hey. Megan, it's Dad." A pause. "What happened?" "He's really sick." I explained what I could. The doctors were concerned. Things were moving faster than expected. She listened quietly. Then she said, "I can't deal with this right now." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm not ready to see him. I'm not calling to pressure you. I'm telling you this is serious. You don't understand. Then help me understand." I said I'm not ready. She ended the call. Later, Dad asked, "Did you tell her?" "Yeah." He looked toward the doorway. "Is she coming?" I hated answering him. "Not yet." He nodded. "She has to come on her own terms." He never asked me to chase her. I still contacted her again. As his condition worsened, I sent updates. I told her when treatments stopped helping. I told her when the doctors became less optimistic. I told her there might not be much time. She still didn't come. Dad never became openly angry about it. He was hurt. That was worse. One night, after I helped him settle into his chair, he looked at me and asked, "You think she hates me?" "No," I said. I don't know whether I believed it. I just knew it wasn't a question a sick father should have been asking. A few weeks later, Dad died. The first days afterward barely felt real. People called. Food appeared at the house. Messages piled up. I would walk into a room and forget why I had gone there. More than once, I reached for my phone because I remembered something I needed to tell Dad. Then I remembered there was no one to call. That was grief for me. Not constant tears. Just ordinary moments becoming painful without warning. Then came the will. Dad had left Megan some money and several sentimental belongings. She wasn't excluded. But the majority of his estate went to me. That included the house. I knew Dad had made plans, but I hadn't known the exact split. I hadn't sat beside him while he wrote the will. I hadn't asked for more. Talking about inheritance while he was alive had felt too much like discussing his death while he was sitting in front of me. Megan called almost immediately after learning what Dad had done. The first thing she said was, "What did you do?" I frowned. "What?" "The will. What about it? You got almost everything." "I didn't write it." "But you were there." "Because Dad was sick." "Exactly." The way she said it made my stomach tighten. "What are you accusing me of?" "I'm asking whether you seriously think this is fair." "I didn't decide it." "You benefited from it." "Megan, Dad left you money too." She laughed bitterly. "You know that's not the point." "Then what is?" "You should split it with me." I stayed quiet. "Half," she said. "You want half of everything?" "I want what's fair." "According to who?" "According to anyone who understands we had the same father." I could feel the conversation slipping somewhere ugly. "Megan, I'm not rewriting Dad's will." "You can." I said I'm not. Then she gave me the line I would hear again and again. "Family is family." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I remembered every time I had asked her to visit Dad. Every update. Every warning that he was getting worse. Dad had been family then too. But I didn't say that. I still believed there might be a way through this without destroying whatever relationship Megan and I had left. "I'm sorry you're upset," I said. "But I'm going to respect what Dad decided." She hung up. Mom called later that day. Her approach was calmer. At first. "I think you should give Megan more." "Why?" "Because she's your sister. She inherited something." "You know what I mean." "I do. And I'm not splitting everything in half." Mom sighed. "Seth, sometimes doing the right thing matters more than what you're legally required to do. That assumes Dad did the wrong thing. I'm saying you could keep the family together. I didn't make Megan stay away from him. Don't turn this into that." "I'm not. But everyone keeps talking like Dad randomly punished her. Your father was complicated. So is Megan." Mom became quiet. Then she said, "You could end this with one decision." I knew what she meant. Give Megan more money. Buy peace. I told Mom I would think about it. And I did. 4 days. Megan was still my sister. Before our parents' divorce turned everything into teams, we had been close. There was a part of me that wondered whether money was worth losing her over. Then I caught myself. I wasn't the one demanding money as the price of keeping the relationship. Dad had made a deliberate decision. Giving away half because Megan was angry would mean pretending that decision didn't matter. It also felt wrong to reduce Dad's final years to a financial negotiation. I would have taken care of him if he had left me nothing. The inheritance wasn't payment. It was his choice. So I told Megan my answer was final. No. That was when her messages changed. At first, she tried guilt. "You know Dad would hate what you're doing." Then anger. "You were always his favorite." Then accusations. "You stayed close to him because you knew this would happen." That one got to me. I called her. "You think I helped Dad because I wanted his house? I think you knew exactly what you were doing. You had every opportunity to come. Don't put this on me. I called you. You pressured me. I told you our father was dying. You always took his side. This isn't about sides. It always was." And suddenly I understood. We weren't arguing about the inheritance anymore. We were arguing about our childhood. Dad. Mom. The divorce. Every old resentment Megan had carried forward. There was no conversation I could have with her that would resolve all of that. I stopped responding. Mom continued trying to pressure me. "You're tearing this family apart. Your sister is hurting." Then came the message that finally made me stop defending myself to her too. "You're acting exactly like your father." Years earlier, that might have bothered me. By then, it didn't. Dad had flaws. But I had watched him keep reaching out to Megan after rejection after rejection. I had watched him refuse to criticize her while he was dying. If refusing to be bullied into changing his decision made me like him, I could live with that. I blocked Megan. For a while, things became quiet. Then legal papers arrived. She was contesting the will. According to Megan, I had manipulated Dad while he was sick. She claimed I had isolated him from her. She said I pressured him while he was vulnerable and influenced him into leaving me the estate. I read the paperwork twice. The first time, I was too angry to absorb it. The part about isolating her was almost unbelievable. I had called her. I had sent updates. I had repeatedly told her to come before it was too late. Now she was using her absence as evidence against me. That was the moment I stopped treating this like a family disagreement. I hired an attorney. He gave me one piece of advice that ended up mattering more than anything else. From now on, save everything. So I did. Texts, emails, voicemails, screenshots, phone records, dates. Anything showing Megan had known Dad was sick. Anything showing Dad had tried to stay connected to her. Anything showing I hadn't secretly controlled his decisions. Megan even had 2 friends provide statements saying they thought something suspicious had happened. Neither had been involved in Dad's care. Neither had been around our family during those final months. Eventually, the challenge was dismissed in a way that prevented her from simply bringing the same claim again. When my attorney told me, I felt relieved. That relief lasted about 5 minutes. Then my phone started ringing. Megan. I didn't answer. She called again. Then from another number. Emails followed. When I blocked her accounts, new ones appeared. Some messages were angry. Some were mocking. Others said things like, "Enjoy what you stole." I stopped responding completely. That seemed to make her more determined. She started commenting under things I posted. Then I began receiving strange subscriptions and junk mail I had never signed up for. Any one of those things would have seemed childish. Together, they made me feel like she could reach into my life whenever she wanted. My attorney kept giving me the same instruction. Document it. I created folders. Saved dates. Kept screenshots. Recorded the pattern. At first, it felt ridiculous. I was collecting evidence against the same sister who used to sit beside me at breakfast. Then one morning I walked outside and saw the garage. Someone had painted one word across it. Thief. I stood there staring. Then I checked the security cameras I had recently installed. It was Megan. Clear enough that there was no question. I watched my own sister walk onto the property and paint that word across my garage. I filed a police report. Mom called after she found out. "Did you really have to involve the police?" I couldn't believe the question. "She came onto my property." "I know. She damaged it. I'm not defending what she did. You're asking why I reported it. I'm saying she's not thinking clearly. So what am I supposed to do? Wait until she does something worse?" Mom hesitated. "She's grieving. We're all grieving. That doesn't mean everyone handles it the same way." "No. But grief doesn't excuse this." Mom went quiet. Then she said, "I don't want this getting worse." Neither did I. But it already had. I thought seeing actual consequences might finally make Megan stop. Instead, she escalated again. One weekend, I left the house for a couple of days. I needed distance from everything. Since Dad died, living there had been strange. I loved the house because it was connected to him. But every room contained reminders that he wasn't coming back. His mug. His chair. A jacket still hanging near the door. Boxes I couldn't bring myself to open. When I returned that weekend, something felt wrong immediately. A window at the back of the house had been damaged. Inside, the place looked like someone had gone through it in a rage. Pictures had been pulled from the walls. Furniture was damaged. Drawers were open. Boxes containing Dad's belongings had been dumped onto the floor. The couch had been ruined with some kind of cleaning liquid. I moved from room to room slowly. The financial damage barely registered. I was looking at Dad's things. Photographs. Old papers. Small objects with almost no monetary value. Things Megan had once claimed were important because they belonged to our family. Now some of them were scattered across the floor. Then I walked into the bathroom. There was a message on the mirror. "You don't deserve this." I stared at it. And for the first time, I understood what the inheritance represented to Megan. It wasn't just money. She believed I didn't deserve the house. She didn't believe I deserved what Dad left me. Maybe she didn't think I deserved the relationship I'd had with him either. I called the police. The cameras mattered again. They showed Megan entering the property while I was away and staying inside for a significant amount of time. Combined with the condition of the house and the other evidence, there was enough for the matter to move forward. This time, I didn't call Mom. I didn't message Megan. I didn't ask why. I let the process happen. Then Megan crossed a line I never imagined she would. She began spreading a devastating false accusation about something she claimed had happened between us when we were younger. It wasn't true. But it was serious enough that people could hear it once and never look at me the same way again. I started noticing relatives becoming distant. Some stopped calling. Others answered me differently. One person asked a strangely vague question about my childhood with Megan. I knew what was happening. My first instinct was to fight publicly. I wanted to post everything. Her messages. The failed lawsuit. The security footage. The police reports. I wanted to make every person who had believed her look at the evidence. My attorney stopped me. Don't turn this into a public war. So I just let her say whatever she wants? No. You document it. If she makes false statements that require legal action, we deal with them properly. But don't start fighting online. I hated the advice. It was still the right advice. So I stayed quiet. And I kept documenting. By then, the folder I had started months earlier had become a timeline of everything. That was what Megan never seemed to understand. She thought silence meant I wasn't doing anything. She thought blocking her meant I had no response. She thought that if she kept pushing, eventually I would either give her what she wanted or lose control. Instead, every message and every incident became another record. Mom's response to the accusation was the final breaking point between us. We were sitting across from each other when she said, "Your sister is grieving in her own way." I stared at her. She broke into my house. I know. She damaged Dad's things. I know. She's telling people something about me that isn't true. Mom looked exhausted. Megan isn't herself. Then she needs help. I agree. Making excuses isn't helping her. I'm not making excuses. You've been making excuses since this started. That's not fair. That word again. Fair. Everything had started because Megan said Dad's will wasn't fair. Then Mom said keeping what he left me wasn't fair. Now apparently refusing to absorb whatever Megan did next wasn't fair either. I'm done, I said. Mom looked at me. What does that mean? It means I can't keep doing this. Seth. No. Every time Megan crosses another line, you explain why I should understand. She's your sister. And I'm your son. Mom didn't answer. I stood up and left. After that, I cut contact with both of them. The criminal case tied to the break-in and property damage continued. There was no dramatic courtroom showdown. No confession in front of a packed room. Real legal disputes are usually less dramatic than people imagine. There was paperwork. Calls. Meetings. Waiting. Then more paperwork. The security footage became a major part of the case. Eventually, Megan accepted a plea agreement. She didn't go to jail. There was probation. Restitution related to some of the damage. And restrictions on contacting me. Earlier in the conflict, I might have wanted something harsher. By then, I didn't care about revenge. I wanted it to stop. I wanted to wake up without checking my phone for another message from a fake account. I wanted to leave the house without wondering what I would find when I came back. For the first time since Dad died, there were enforceable boundaries. And slowly, the chaos ended. No new accounts. No calls from unfamiliar numbers that led back to Megan. No damage. Nothing. At first, the silence made me nervous. I had spent so long expecting another crisis that peace felt suspicious. If a car slowed outside, I looked through the window. If my phone rang from an unknown number, I hesitated before answering. Then a week passed without anything happening. Another followed. Then months. I started living normally again. The next surprise came from extended family. Relatives who had barely spoken to me started reaching out. One apologized. Then another. Apparently, people had begun comparing the things Megan told them. One relative had heard that I prevented Megan from seeing Dad. Another had been told Dad wanted to reconcile, but I kept them apart. Someone else believed I manipulated the will because Dad had been too sick to understand what he was doing. The stories didn't line up. Dates changed. Details changed. Different people had been given different versions. Eventually, they started asking questions. One relative told me, "I should have called you before believing any of it." "You could have," I said. "I know." That was the entire conversation. Another admitted, "When I heard there was a lawsuit, I assumed there had to be something wrong with the will." Again, all I could think was that nobody had bothered to ask me. For months, I had imagined vindication would feel satisfying. It didn't. Mostly it made me tired. Some relationships recovered. Others didn't. I stopped believing that every person who finally apologized automatically deserved the relationship we had before. Mom eventually reached out too. I nearly ignored the call. Then I answered. "Hello? It's me. I know." A pause. How have you been? After everything, the normality of the question caught me off guard. I'm okay. That's good. We talked for about 10 minutes. Nothing important was resolved. But we didn't fight. Over the following months, we spoke occasionally. Our relationship is still complicated. I still believe she defended Megan long after she should have stopped. Mom still seems to believe I could have handled parts of the conflict differently. Neither of us is likely to convince the other. But we reached a point where every conversation doesn't become another argument about Dad, Megan, or the inheritance. For now, that's enough. Megan and I still don't speak. I haven't tried to change that. People sometimes ask whether I miss my sister. The answer isn't simple. I miss the kid who used to steal food off my plate and deny it while she was still chewing. I miss the sister I knew before every family disagreement became another reason to choose sides. I miss who we were before our parents' divorce became something we carried into adulthood. But I don't miss the person who made me afraid of what would happen next. Maybe those are both Megan. I don't know how to reconcile them. And I'm no longer waiting for an explanation. The house changed too. For a long time after Dad died, I treated it almost like a museum. His mug stayed where he left it. His jacket stayed near the door. Boxes remained unopened because sorting through them felt too final. After the break-in, something shifted. I repaired the damage. Put the photographs back up. Went through Dad's belongings carefully. I kept what mattered. Packed some things away. Let go of others. Then I started making small changes around the house. At first, I felt guilty. As if moving a chair or replacing something meant I was erasing him. Then I realized I had it backward. Dad hadn't left me a museum. He had left me a home. Eventually, I had to live in it. That was when I finally understood what the inheritance had really done to our family. When everything started, I thought Megan and I were fighting about money. She wanted half. I refused. Simple. Except the money was only the spark. Everything underneath had been there for years. Mom's resentment toward Dad. Megan blaming him for the divorce. Dad regretting the relationship he had lost with her. My decision to remain close to him. The completely different versions of our childhood Megan and I had carried into adulthood. The inheritance didn't create those problems. It exposed them. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if I had given Megan half from the beginning. Maybe the argument would have ended. Maybe Mom would have been satisfied. Maybe Megan and I would still speak. But after seeing how far she was willing to go when I said no, I can't convince myself money would have repaired what was actually broken. Maybe it would only have delayed the next fight. Maybe it would have taught her that if she pushed hard enough, eventually I would give in. Dad made his decision. I respected it. Doing that cost me more than I ever expected. My relationship with Megan may never recover. For a while, I nearly lost Mom too. But I also learned that keeping a family together at any cost is not the same thing as keeping peace. Sometimes what people call peace is simply one person surrendering so everyone else can avoid confronting the real problem. My life is quiet now. There are no court dates on my calendar. No legal letters waiting on the counter. I can leave for a weekend and expect the house to look the same when I return. And for the first time since Dad died, I can think about him without immediately thinking about everything that happened afterward. That matters more to me than winning ever did. At first, I thought winning meant keeping the inheritance. Then I thought it meant defeating Megan's challenge. Later, I thought it meant seeing consequences for what she did. I was wrong. Winning was getting my life back. It was waking up in the home Dad left me and finally feeling like it belonged to me. It was having boundaries that no longer needed to be argued about. It was being able to remember my father as my father instead of the beginning of the worst family conflict of my life. I didn't get a perfect ending. Megan never apologized. Mom never admitted I had been right about everything. Our family never gathered around a table and suddenly forgave one another. Real life rarely ends that neatly. What I got was quieter. Distance. Boundaries. A home. And the freedom to move forward. Dad left me an inheritance. But the thing I fought hardest to keep wasn't the money. It was my right to stop being punished for accepting what he chose to leave me. So after everything that happened, I still wonder how other people would judge the decision that started all of this. Was I right to honor my father's will and refuse to give my sister half, or should I have split the inheritance from the beginning if it might have kept our family together?